Hey everybody, you're watching Educational Series for Infrared Saunas Part 2 video. So in this video we're going to just briefly talk about an important purchase criteria or analysis criteria, which is the companies or manufacturers of infrared saunas. Okay, so way back when there was really just a few infrared sauna companies that were around, and what happened is infrared saunas started to become popular. And so when that happened, the industry started to get filled with a lot of imported saunas from other countries, mainly China and Japan. And Korea mainly just makes the electronics for some of them. However, about 90-something% of the industry, including even still today, are Chinese manufacturers for the most part, very large factories. And there's mainly about four in China, which compose about 90+% of all the brands you see out there. So when you come across a brand, there's a good chance, not always, but if you get lucky, but most of the time, the construction, most of the assembly, etc., has been taking place in one of those four factories in China. Now again, Korea does some good electronics. Don't have such an issue with them doing electronics because they do a good job. But Japan also, there's a couple brands out there that promote, and usually the way you can tell is they literally tell you that. Although a couple brands also mention Japanese emitters, so that's what actually releases the infrared if you watch the first video. Now, those companies that do have the Japanese emitters do their manufacturing for the rest of the sauna in China. Okay, and we'll cover more about emitters themselves in another video if you're curious about that. But anyways, so there's really just a handful of companies and also manufacturers. Remember, manufacturers doesn't always mean companies manufacturing. In this industry in general, there's a lot of companies, sauna companies out there, but very few manufacturers. And also even less, very few companies that also manufacture their saunas, okay? There's a couple in Canada, and there's about 3 in the United States, if you're interested in a American-made or something like that. And when I say that made, I do mean manufactured, actually made here. That's another thing you kind of have to watch out for, and I'll talk about that in another video. Differences between what manufactured and assembled means, and the differences between those two. So back to manufacturers and companies. In this industry, there's very few manufacturers, okay? And so they're also the companies that will usually be offering warranties. So most of the time you buy a sauna, it's a manufacturer's warranty. But this is important to note, is you also need to assess the company that is standing behind the warranty. So they're the ones who basically you have the relationship with. When you buy a sauna, you have a relationship with the company, and the company is going to provide all the customer service and support to fulfill the different, basically all the different aspects of the agreement, the manufacturer's warranty itself. Okay, you don't call up the manufacturer, for example, the factory, and say, hey, I got a problem, can you come fix it? Okay, so you really want to do your homework on different companies, which I've done my homework on them. If you want to, you can go independently research as well. But there's really just like a handful of companies, essentially, that have been around a good amount of time, provide good customer service, and that's basically it. And the way you know that is it's a little challenging if you're on the consumer end. You have to really talk to a lot of customers, which I have access to. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from thousands of customers over the years, so I get a lot of information from that aspect. You can also try to research a little bit on the internet. If people have provided some feedback or reviews, but it's usually just not enough to really make a good informed purchase decision about and know what to believe about a company per se. Sometimes when a consumer claims something or complains, a lot of times they're disgruntled or they're leaving a lot of information out of context. So just be aware of that. But so it's no coincidence that the better companies have been around a while, and they're not, and they're actually manufacturing their saunas themselves. Okay, and the reason is very simple. Those big manufacturers overseas, they can pretty much only offer a certain level of quality, and you get what you pay for. And ultimately, think about what their goal is as a company. Those manufacturers, now those big factories, their goal is to attract customers. Their customers are companies who are going to import their saunas and maybe tell the manufacturer to customize a doorknob or make it look a little bit aesthetically different. Maybe put in some kind of unique features, right? But those features don't really have any efficacy. And I'll talk about that in another video, by the way, so how you can tell. And then there's a lot of companies that just don't care, and they'll just call it a different model name, put their label on it. Meanwhile, you look on another website, sauna looks identical. For example, Sunlighten, when they came out with their newer design aesthetically on their saunas, if you notice, they look very different than most of the other carbon saunas out there. And they look very modern. I think they're very pretty saunas. Very nice to look at, right? But there is, it's either, I know for sure it's one, there may be a second one I'm forgetting about, also sells the same sauna, because it's coming from the same factory, essentially. But of course it's under a different brand. And keep in mind that you can only customize so much at the manufacturing plant, okay? Because they've optimized their construction, their streamlined process to crank out. It's their job, basically, to try to attract, again, customers and say, hey, we can supply 4,000 saunas, 5,000 saunas a month, and these are your margins, this is your cost of doing business, importation, blah, 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 blah. And then you have other manufacturers that are looking at that and saying, okay, how can we copy that? Or are we just going to kind of do our own unique thing? But in general, they try to copy each other if one manufacturer does something a little bit different. And they're always, always trying to get a better margin, a better profit margin, which means you have to streamline the manufacturing process, even more so, but especially you have to try to find a cheaper grade of components that you can get away with. You always have to try to look to basically cut corners in order to really have an attractive profit margin when you're trying to compete with other manufacturers and factories, and they're very competitive. So just keep in mind that that's their mindset. Their mindset is not after thinking about you, the end consumer, and your health. And if this is really going to have a lot of therapeutic efficacy for you, and if it's really going to seek your unique needs, that's not their end game. Their end game is to be profitably, attractive to importing companies. That's it. Okay, so that's why we find a lot of sketchy or just useless from the standpoint of not therapeutic features and functionality with different types of infrared saunas that come from those big 4 manufacturers. Maybe we could say big 5 or 6 if we include Japan and Korea. Okay, but that's pretty much what we got to look at here. We also, again, remember, look at the companies that are importing, because in general in this industry, companies tend to come and go in 7-year increments, go bankruptcy. They have some other thing. Again, that's because these companies, most of them, are not real companies. Okay, they haven't really invested in their business. They mainly just started off, like most of them, importing a bunch of saunas, gotten a good price on it, had their label put on it, came up with a website, and did their marketing and did their advertising. Some companies which appear to be big, well-known companies that have really great marketing, and it inspires almost like trust, like this brand is somehow better. Just remember that some companies ended up getting so successful because of their previous marketing that they're able to spend a lot more on their marketing and advertising. So just because they do that and they appear a certain way, remember the point of you coming to the site, consulting with me, and my job is to talk about the therapeutic efficacy of health products, the therapeutic efficacy and the quality between brands. And there is a difference. And to then hone in on and focus and spend your dollars on that. Because when we actually get down to the dollar analysis, you'll find that a lot of times getting the best or getting just a real good quality, really good value tier 1 brand, sometimes there's a few $100 difference, or sometimes no difference at all between that and something of much lower quality, and a company that's not really a company, it's been a little unstable. So that's what's very interesting, is you can't shop by price either. So it takes a lot of research. And I will talk about more of what I've researched of the actual aspects of a sauna in the next few videos.